I couldn't have ever predicted I would feel like I do right now. I'm getting so excited. Books are so powerful and magical. I'm feeling so shattered. The depth, the intensity. I just realized, oh my gosh, I should have known. The moment I looked into your eyes, I should have known I would never win against you. I will never be the same. This is Beauty and the Beast on steroids, and he's actually just pretty terrible, and she literally doesn't talk. She just cries all the time. Swoon worthy. The guts and the chopping and the whatever. The beginning is the worst, for sure. Truly, that feeling I will never forget. This book, actually, you can't tell what it is. This book took over the entire world, essentially, last year in the fall. I'm finally gonna read it. Spoiler, I've already started and I'm almost halfway. But given that it's an 1,000-page book, I think that's okay that I've already started, and I've had so many opinions going into it. It is also currently March 17th, March 16th, something along those lines. And I technically started this book on October 17th, somewhere around there. I got gifted this for my birthday. I also have a very special reason that I really want to read it and finish it and have thoughts and opinions. But it took me so long to get just that much through a book, and much longer than any other fantasy book. To give some backstory on Alchemized by Senlin Yu, this was, if you don't already know, inspired by a fan fiction called Manacled, and that was a Harry Potter, Draco, and Hermione fan fiction. And I think the premise was if the dark side won, so if Lord Voldemort was in power, how the world would have unfolded and what would have happened afterwards. We're living in kind of after the Great Battle of Hogwarts and Voldemort won. So that's the world that Senlin Yu had set up. They created this essentially follow-up story. So prologue? Yeah, not prequel. Wait, prologue? Epilogue. So think of Manacled, the original fanfiction, as the prologue of what happens after if the dark side had won in the wizarding world. Then, I know that got a lot of popularity. I had heard about it many years ago when I was on Book Talk, but I never personally read it. I do know that it got a lot of good reviews and people seem to generally enjoy it. I'm sure now that I'm reading this, I have thought, what if I go back and read it? But I don't know. It's a very long book. So first I'm gonna get through this and then we'll see if I want to go back and read Manacled. All that being said, I'm a massive Harry Potter fan. I love those books so dearly, the movies as well. So Alchemized is essentially, I think the rewriting, I think it's accurate to say that, it's like the rewriting of Manacled, Senlin Yu's first work, which was that fan fiction, and now they created their own magical world, and at the base of it, it's necromancy, which I hate gore. I can't stand horror movies. I don't watch them. I can't do stabby books with a lot of gore. I just can't stomach it. I don't enjoy reading about it. And when I received this book on October 15, 2025, I was so excited because I'd heard about this book so much. It was everywhere in the bookstores and everyone online was talking about it and reading it. And of course, knowing it's based off of one of the worlds and series I love the most, I thought I really want to read it. I started reading it and I vividly remember opening this up, sitting on my couch and thinking I would throw up. It was so gory and descriptive and gross, and and that's not a diss to the book. If anything, that just shows how good the writing is, because I felt like I was there living it. I felt like I could smell, see, almost visualize and like touch. Obviously I wouldn't have, but the organs and the tanks and the chemicals, everything is descriptive. I don't want to say to a fault, because that's the whole point, you get in the world, but it was too much. It was genuinely too much for me to stomach. I could not do it. I think I read 2 to 4 chapters because I did try and push through and I couldn't. I could not do it. And then I kept this here on the ledge of my couch, this book, for probably a month or two before I decided to just plop it back on my book stack, and I thought I will revisit this at a later date. I simply cannot read this right now. And then all of the fall season passed, and I thought, well, this is like dark arts, dark fantasy. It doesn't feel right to read it in any other season than the fall. But then last week I was on a work trip, and it was a very stressful work trip, and I had already finished the books I traveled with. So I was sitting on my 7-hour delayed flight, having 6 hours more ahead of me of travel, and I didn't really want to get a new book on my Kindle, and I'd already read the 2 physical books I had with me. So I decided, I have Audible credits. I know someone who listened to Alchemized and they thoroughly enjoyed it, and she also loves the Wizarding World. So I thought, okay, I might be crazy here, but what if it's actually easier to listen to than to read? Which doesn't really make sense, right? Because you're thinking, aren't you more engaged in the world? Not engaged, but hearing it might be harder. For me, it was so much better. Honestly, flew through this. So I started listening to Alchemized on Audible 4 days ago. And now I've been going back and reading the physical copy. Last night I read about this much. So I read around 80 pages. But until chapter 30, until about part 2 of the book, it's split up into 3 parts, I listened on Audible. And it was not that bad. The guts and the chopping and the whatever, the beginning is the worst for sure. And everyone says that. I remember back in October when I was trying to read it, I went on Reddit and looked at people's opinions on how hard it is to read and how bad it is and how much I need to push through to get to the more bearable parts. And everyone says part 1 is the worst. I can contest to that. I'm on part 2 now. It's a lot better. Or I'm getting desensitized to it actually, because I was reading last night and the part we just got to, like, something's happening to Farron, not a spoiler, and it probably would have made me feel a lot queasier at the start of reading this book, but maybe I'm slightly desensitized to it, or I don't know what changed, but I'm loving this book and I really want to document me reading it because 1, it was a very special birthday gift, and 2, I'm seeing now parallels to, I think, Draco and Hermione. I'm kind of getting it now. Helena, who is our main character and is essentially the Hermione, doesn't remind me as much of Hermione as Farron reminds me of Draco. So to recap, our main characters are Helena and Farron, Kane Farron, he goes by his last name, and then Helena, I think her last name is Murrow. So those are our 2 characters, and that's the Draco and Hermione. I'm having a hard time placing everyone else. I can tell who Voldemort is because it's the leader of the Undying. Honestly, some of the terminology, like it's vivimancy is the type of magic. I don't know if magic is the right word because magic seems like light and positive and fun, and none of this is that. This is the opposite of light, positive, and fun. It is dark, negative, and I don't want to say it's not fun, but it's just, you're not getting a warm, fuzzy feeling reading this. Let me tell you that much. You get maybe 1 every 300 pages, a little bit of a, oh, and that's about it. The whole other rest of this book, you're just praying that things get better for our characters because it's so bad. And now in part 2, we're actually in the past a little bit, so before the evil side won, and it's so interesting to see how people on the good side, you understand what their motivations are, and they genuinely want better for people and their world, but some of the actions they take to get there are so questionable, and you stop and pause and think to yourself, then are you the good guy? Just because you're fighting on the right side, what you're doing is wrong. It's really good. I love this book. And everyone I've seen, honestly, every single review I've watched on YouTube, I've watched a lot of my favorite YouTubers read it through the past few months, and especially spoiler-free ones. I only have watched those, of course, and this is spoiler-free. I have found everyone to pretty much say it was a well-written book and they enjoyed it. It's just, it might not be for everyone. I am shocked at how my mind has changed, genuinely. thinking back to me in October and how appalled I was, and I felt really guilty because when I receive a book as a gift, I tried to prioritize it and read it quite quickly because that's so sweet that someone thought of me and associated me to a book or thought that I would enjoy a book. But I couldn't push through. It was genuinely making me so queasy to read. And yeah, maybe because time went by, I don't know, maybe I got less sensitive, or because work was so stressful, it helped me escape and I didn't really care about the goriness as much. And again, hearing it for some reason helped me a lot. Like listening on audiobook helped me a lot. And I have been obsessed. Like in 4 days, I listened to probably 20 hours of audiobook, and I listen while I'm cleaning, walking, doing anything. Every time I do my dishes, pop in my headphones. I was meal prepping yesterday for about 2 hours, listened that whole time. So I've just been finding every single possible pocket of time to listen to this book, and I'm really excited to keep reading. As I said, we just got to part 2, so I think I'm 3 or 4 chapters into part 2, and I went through my book to find where part 3 is, and part 2 is the huge chunk of the book. We're getting a lot more backstory on both of our main characters, but especially Farron. In part 1, Helena basically shouldn't be acting in a way she is. She's like a captive prisoner, essentially, and she was tossed aside with everyone else. And then they realize something's different about her, and they actually think she holds secrets that can either hurt or help the evil side. So they send her to the High Necromancer. Yeah, that's Farron. They send her to King Farron to be his prisoner so that he can work his mind powers and vivimancy, I'm pretty sure, to unlock the secrets of her mind. So that was all of part 1, and now we're in part 2, which is a flashback, so years before. So this is before the evil one. So all the people we've heard about from the good side are alive. There's a lot of death. A lot of death in this book. And I would 100% read trigger warnings. It's a, I think, probably pretty accurate depiction of the tough choices you're faced with during times of war. And some chapters, still listening, were really hard to stomach. I would get teary-eyed walking around on the street listening to this book. So definitely not for the faint of heart. That being said, written so beautifully, and I'm gonna keep reading it with much, I don't know if enjoyment is the right word or enthusiasm, but I'm gonna keep reading it with much interest. There we go. I'm gonna keep reading, get more backstory on Farron and Helena, because we essentially just found out why she was sent to him. It's so interesting to do this spoiler free, but I'll leave it at that. My meeting just got canceled, which means I have a bunch of admin work that I can do while listening to the audiobook. Little reading update. I just got home from a spin class. I'm so tired and so hungry. And I have the audiobook playing on my speaker while I make my salad. I bought kale for the first time ever, and I'm really excited. I'm gonna try this massaging method to make it taste good. I'm honestly so hungry I can't talk to you about the book right now, but update, I'm on chapter 35 and it's getting so good. We're getting a lot more backstory on Helena, our main character, and her abilities, which is really interesting. Also, I feel like I need to look up the characters, because why are there some names on the good side right now that I recognize from part 1, and I'm trying to connect dots, and maybe I was too scared of the gore and I wasn't paying enough attention, and now things are connecting. The dots are connecting. Also, I keep staring at my little peanut jelly cat, and I wanted to show you him. Look how cute he is. I love him. Okay, I'm starving, so I'm gonna make my salad and listen to this audiobook some more. Okay, let's talk Alchemized, but first I'm so frustrated because I just opened up where my bookmark was, and everything I listened to this morning on Audible, I'd already read, and I thought I had. The problem is, right now we're in a slightly repetitive era because, by the way, I'm on page 488. I'm just about to start chapter 41. Wait. Oh my gosh, wait, no. I'm reading the page and I had read ahead. Okay, we're at a pretty exciting part though. So right now, as you can see, I'm pretty much halfway. This is what I've read. This is what I've yet to read. I would love to binge read this. Tonight, We are going to sign the lease for our apartment. It is currently March 18th and we're moving at the end of June, which is so exciting. I'm gonna miss this place a lot, but that's okay. Growth is great, new beginnings are great. This is still a spoiler-free reading vlog, but one of the ways they decided to incorporate a traumatic event in this book, which happens between our two main characters, was actually a deal breaker for a lot of people. That's what I saw online. And I chose to push through and read past it. And now that we're in the past, it's not making me at all justify some of the very questionable things that have happened in part 1, but it is making me understand a little bit more the motivations behind certain things. And that's why I think this book is incredible at depicting war and tough choices in hard times, and almost not giving you Stockholm Syndrome, but kind of giving you Stockholm Syndrome as the reader, because the more time you're spending with these characters, the more you grow attached to them, and therefore the more you basically start excusing what they're doing when at the base level what they're doing is wrong. Think of everyone who loves Snape and Draco in Harry Potter. At the end of the day, they did terrible, terrible, terrible things, and understandably, you know, their upbringing was really hard and they were put in these tough situations to make tough choices, but still how they treated people and the side effects of their situation were still wrong and evil. And that is exactly what I'm getting in this book, and it's making me feel very conflicted because now I'm rooting essentially for the bad guy. And if you read dark romances or mysteries, or I don't know, some thrillers where you kind of root for the villain, this is really different, I find, because the premise and how it's set up in part 1 and in the start of the book is that we are rooting for the good side. So then experiencing almost the flip and noticing how as a reader my perception of everyone and everything is changing is scary, but it's so interesting, and it's keeping me, it's making me want to just read all day and kind of see how much more this book is going to shift my perception of the good versus the evil side. It's making me think a lot bigger and more beyond this book, if that makes sense, about like trying to put myself in the shoes of politicians and in the time of war. So I hope that made sense. I hope that articulated. There's so much going on in my brain as I read this book. But essentially, Farron and Helena are spending a lot of time lately together. She just healed him from something because she uses her vivimancy, I think that's what it's called, like her type of magic to be a healer. And we've gotten a lot more backstory on her, as I said. We still don't really know like anything about him. Anyway, I'm only halfway. That's what's wild, is I'm only halfway. Nothing has made me cry yet. Not that books often make me that emotional, but I've definitely felt very uncomfortable, and especially at the big scene at the end of part 1 and her grappling in like the guilt of having to choose one terrible thing over another terrible thing for herself. That was very hard to read, and I think very well written, almost scarily well written. Anyway, it's getting a little fun right now, actually. There's a lot more banter between Kane. I keep switching which name I call him because they switch between calling him by his first versus last name. But now there's finally banter and more fun. They're talking to each other versus just brutally staring into each other, exchanging intel and healing. They're actually speaking and they're getting to know each other a bit more. At the end of the day, I knew, well, it's not a romantasy. I would not call it that. There has been about 0% romance, maybe 0.1% until now. But I knew that there was a couple, like I knew there's a love component to this book. I'm just glad we're finally getting to them talking to each other, because until now I was thinking, I mean, okay, there are 1,000 pages, but I was kind of thinking like, are they ever gonna connect? Because up to now, this is like the worst, this is Beauty and the Beast on steroids, and he's actually just pretty terrible, and she literally doesn't talk. She just cries all the time, which fair enough. She's been through a lot. Anyway, that's my word vomit for right now. I am going to, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have so much to do and I just want to listen to the audiobook or keep reading and stay in bed, and it's such a sunny, lovely, lovely day. I'm so cozy. I just had dark chocolate with peanut butter. It was so good. I'm on page 503. I have a chamomile sleepy time tea. I have a candle burning. I have my water bottle. I have a heated blanket. And I have my kitty and a little fireplace on YouTube. A double XL Eras Tour hoodie. And I'm just so cozy. The book is getting good. I mean, it already was good. I'm getting very annoyed at some people who are supposed to be on the good side. And Helena is a pushover, which is making me think I really don't see Hermione in her. And I know this is a separate work of art. And actually, I think in the fall, when I was following the release of this book a little more, I think the author also was calling out to readers and asking people to separate Alchemized from their previous work. But it's hard because a lot of people have drawn parallels in the videos I've watched, and just knowing at the base of it that it's supposed to be Draco and Hermione, or not supposed to be, but loosely based off of, you could say. Oh my gosh. Helena. Hermione. That's not even that different, I just noticed. Anyway, one thing that just popped in my mind before I keep reading, I'm actually about to go right now and look at fan art because I don't really know how to picture all the different characters. And something I'm really grateful about is even when I look at fan art, my perception can still change. So it's not like it's going to set it in stone or ruin the rest of the book by looking up fan art. I'm just so curious how other people envision these characters. And given it's such a popular book, I'm sure I'll find a lot on Pinterest. So I'm going to do that and keep reading and enjoying my cozy slow night. I think it's about 7:30 right now, something along those lines, maybe even 7:40. And I'm ready to get to bed in about an hour. I was getting ready, listening to the audiobook, and I'm only halfway ready. Like, my hair is looking funny, and I have no lip on because I still have to eat dinner, so I'm not gonna waste product. But this book is so good. Oh my goodness. I wanted to read to you one of the parts that completely stuck with me in my heart. It finally got to the part of the book where I understand. I understand why everyone loves it so much and raves about this book, and it's going to stay with me for a very long time. I already feel a 5-star coming. But what I want to read to you is at the very end of chapter 50. Also, chapter 51, Chef's Kiss. It's, if you know, you know, in A Court of Mist and Fury, there's the really famous chapter where all the anticipation and lead up, like the moment happens. Chapter 51 is that sweet moment lead up in Alchemized where these characters are just finally showing their emotions, but in such a beautiful and raw and twisted and ugly way. But first, this quote at the end of chapter 50. "You are not replaceable," he said, his hands trembling against her shoulders. "You are not required to make your death convenient. You are allowed to be important to people. The reason I'm here, the reason I'm doing any of this, is to keep you alive, to keep you safe. That was the deal." You are not required to make your death convenient. It means so much more when you know the context of the book, because out of context, that sounds a little silly, but in the context of this book and the war times, I loved that so much. Okay, some more from chapter 51 now. This is the next chapter. "I should have known. The moment I looked into your eyes, I should have known I would never win against you." Oh, I can't tell you character names. I feel like you can kind of guess, but I'm not going to tell you character names for this one quote, also in chapter 51, so it's not a spoiler. But if you are scared of any spoilers at all and you don't know how the story progresses, even though I've told you what this is based off of, you can skip ahead. But this is one of my also favorite moments. "You get to have this. You're allowed to feel good things. Don't be alone. Have this with me." So cute. Okay, and what did I say? I said I'm on chapter 58 on the audiobook. I had just checked before starting to film. So this is how much I've read. That is so much progress. So in the physical copy, I'm at around page 735. and there are around 1,020 pages. So I've got about a normal book length left. Not a normal, a little bit short, but I have just under 300 pages left. That is insane. This is such a long book. And I just got to one of like the best parts. Oh my gosh, that probably means we're really close to part 3. I can't remember when part 3 started, and I think it'll be really hard to find, and I don't really want to spoil anything. Oh, there. Okay, I found part 3. Spoiler free, which is great because my eyes skim so quickly. But this is how much left I have of part 2, and then this is gonna be part 3. I'm going to go finish getting ready. I have a fun little girls' night with my friends. Part of me wishes I could just stay home and keep reading Alchemized because it's so good, but I will have that time. Anyway, adios. See you in the next clip. I swear this book has completely taken over all of my brain space, and I've actually been feeling a little down the past few days. It could be a mix of a lot of things. The weather is atrocious right now. There's a snowstorm going on. I think I have a little bit of a cold going on. I'm being a Debbie Downer right now, and that's what I've been dealing with this week. I hate being in a bad mood and having plans. I feel like I'm bringing down my friends and Joe. It's bad. I kind of just avoid everyone when I'm feeling down. Maybe that is a normal thing. I don't know. I just like don't want to impose my sulkin mood. But the book is actually providing me a good escape. So I don't know if it's a vicious cycle, like a catch-22, because the book is so heavy and I don't want to say negative, but basically negative. Bella's on my lap, but I did want to grab the book right now to show you my progress. I'm still not on part 3. I am on chapter 62. It's wild to think how far I've come in reading it. I have been reading it in 3 mediums. I've been reading the physical copy, and that's definitely when I get the most reading done, is when I'm sitting and have a dedicated reading time, and just the paper is very, very satisfying. I don't know what high quality paper it is in the Alchemized book. I wonder if they had to use thinner paper because there are so many pages, so then maybe to not make it super heavy, although the book is extremely heavy. Joe and I were playing with the book because it was so funny that it's so heavy to carry. And it's funny because anytime I want to switch how I'm reading, I need to go to my most recent form of reading to find where I am. And I've probably reread so much of this book unintentionally, that just like a few pages or minutes, because when you're listening on Audible, which I actually just was, I went on a walk to the grocery store and then Starbucks this morning, and I was listening for about 30-40 minutes, and now I'm 5 minutes into chapter 62. What does that mean? It'd be so helpful actually if Audible, I'm giving them a good business idea, so Amazon, listen up. It'd be really helpful if it had the page you're at in like the traditionally published. You know what, it would be a step up if there are books that have paperback and hardback versions, if they tell you what page you're on based on what version of the book you have the physical copy of. Because I think it's quite, speaking of personal experience, I think it's quite common that people read audio and physical at the same time and go back and forth. I do. And I think I know of a few people who do. Anyway, it's just funny because when I'm reading on my Kindle as well, like I have to find what page I'm on to get to that page on my Kindle. And my Kindle, I don't know how to change the setting. I really should be able to. I mean, I'm the generation of tech savviness, but I don't know how to change it from location to page, because right now I'm on location like 9,000, but I don't know what page that is. So, and I guess it's hard because my font on my Kindle is really large, because I always read on my Kindle. It's kind of my little routine where I fall asleep reading, and I have the font really, really big, and then it's like the darkest and it's inverted, so the paper is black, in case you were wondering how my Kindle is set up. Anyway, it's just funny because I always end up rereading a little bit, but it's kind of nice, I guess, because it gets me like back in the groove of what I was just reading, so I don't miss out on the new paragraph by having to recalibrate and remember where I was. All that being said, now that Ella left me and now she's sleeping on her little spot on my desk because she probably wants me to go work there. I've been working on my couch all morning. I think I just got what this is. We were at Farron's country home and Helena was, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, Helena. I've been also listening to it, so I should definitely have the pronunciations down. Nonetheless, Helena just saw a dragon, some sort of dragon on the floor of the Farron's, like it's engraved in the ground, so I wonder if that's the dragon. I swear the dragon has not been an important part of the book so far, so I'm a little bit confused why it's literally on the cover of the book. Maybe it'll give us a little glimpse into what's to come. This is how much I've read, and this is what I have left. I really want to finish this book before my trip. I'm leaving. Today's Friday, and on Sunday I'm going to Florida for 5 days. Yeah, Sunday to Friday, completely alone in an Airbnb, and I will be reading. I just want to walk and read. I'm working from there. I'm staying at an Airbnb, that's why. It's because I needed a desk. But I honestly, hopefully just find a really good cafe by the beach, or I want to at least be like near nature, water, something. So it would have to be by the beach. And I want to work from there all day, be in the humidity. And oh, my mom is calling me. But that's the plan. And I really want to finish this before I leave on Sunday because I don't want to carry this huge book with me to only have this much left. I think I could. I have book club tonight, so I'm busy, but I generally don't stay very late. Generally. Book club's from 5-ish to, I don't know, let's say 9. And then I don't know how I'm going to get home, but we'll figure that out. And then I'll probably read for a little bit. Tomorrow I do have plans pretty much all day. We're going axe throwing. I'm so excited. I'm actually seeing Jazz in the day, and we're gonna go to one of my favorite bookstores in the city. It's called Joie de Livre, which is, so joie de vivre is a saying. It's like the joy of life, and they did a play on words, and it's joie de livre, so it's kind of like the joy of books. And it's a cafe, and at night it's kind of a bar, but it's also a bookstore, and they are, I was gonna say targeted, they're specialized in romance, fantasy, and I guess fiction. They had a little bit of everything. They had mystery as well, but it's a very small store and a bookstore. And why I really want to go is to pre-order Carly Fortune's new book because they're getting 25 signed copies, so I want to pre-order and save that. And Jazz has some admin work she wants to do, so I'm excited to go and just have a really nice chill day with my best friend. And then we might go to another Montreal store because they have a Canadien collection, which is my favorite hockey team. So tomorrow will be fun. I just don't know how much reading we'll get done. And then I have date night, and we're doing like a hole-in-the-wall sushi place and then going axe throwing, which is going to be so much fun. That's like, I'm so excited. They even axe throwing, I can't remember what time we're going. I think it's 7 or 7:30, but not too late, so then afterwards hopefully we can read for the rest of the night. And my flight is at 8 or 9 a.m. on Sunday, so kind of an early wake up, which essentially means I need to finish this book today or tomorrow to not have to lug it to Florida with me. I really don't want to carry it to Florida. I suppose I wouldn't have to because I could just finish it via Audible or my Kindle, but there's something so special about this book. I think especially part 3 when I finally get there, which is this. Whoa, this is part 3. Chapter 66. Oh my god, wait, I can't. Okay, I didn't really get a spoiler, but I did read the first sentence of part 3, and that just made me realize we're in a different timeline right now. I just basically got a flashback to how this book works. I just realized, oh my gosh, I just realized we're in the past. Part 1, I forgot part 1 because we've been in part 2 for so long. I'm getting so excited. Books are so powerful and magical. Okay, guys, I fully forgot part 1 happened. So I assume part 3 is gonna go back in that timeline and follow chronologically after the last events we saw in part 1. How is everything going to change? Oh my god, I think I was watching a reading vlog of Alchemized back in the fall when it had just come out, and someone said they would love to go back and reread part 1 after having read part 2, and I so get that. I'm absolutely not gonna do that. There are so many books I want to read in this lifetime, and part 1 was impossible to get through. Like, it was so gory, it was so hard to read. Part 2 is way easier. Not easier, just like less explicitly gory. So definitely not doing that, but that'd be so interesting to go back and make the connections and like the clues of everything you know in part 1. Oh, Senlin Yu is a genius. This whole timeline. I wonder if in the fanfiction it was like this as well, of the timeline jumping. Oh my goodness. So who did it to her? I have so many questions. I really don't want to work. It's 12:01 p.m. so my lunchtime just started, but I do have a lot of work to do, and I kind of got in a productive flow this morning because I responded to an email I've been putting off for so long. You probably all know that feeling. But I stood my ground and I was very kind and like professional, and anyway, so I kind of got in a productive flow. This is, I think, where I'll stop this section. I really haven't told you much. Like, part 2 is a little bit repetitive, but we're 4 chapters away from part 3, which is wild. It's the same formula of things happening. Like, she sees Farron because of the mission, and then she goes back and war is tragic and all the bad things are happening. I'm a little bit confused. We've met so many people in the Resistance. I also honestly can't tell you the difference between the Resistance versus the Eternal Flame. Also, the whole gods thing, Sol, I think, is the god of the sun, the god of the good side. I'm so confused what he does. I don't understand that as a premise, but I think that's the point. I think we're supposed to be a little bit confused because Helena is confused about that as well. So you're going along really with me because I'm being so brutally honest. There are things that are not clicking, and yet all I really care about are the chapters when Farron and Helena are together. This obsidian thing is making me very nervous. There have also been a lot more really hard-hitting lines, but I think what I read to you in the last clip from around chapter 50-51 were chef's kiss. Top tier, no notes. And I did end up looking the characters on Pinterest, like, for fan art. And why did I forget it's based off of Draco and Hermione? Obviously they look like them. So that is what I've been picturing. It has been nice though. So to get into the book, it was helpful to think of it as Draco and Hermione. But now the more I've read, I definitely don't see their personalities as potently anymore because I love Harry Potter so much and I identify as Hermione a little egotistically, but I really love Hermione. I even have a Hermione quote tattoo. I don't fully see her in Helena. I think they're both stubborn and very clever and smart, but and I guess they both put the greater good above their own safety. I don't know. There are little hints of Helena that I don't see Hermione in, or vice versa. My mind is scattered. I'm going to keep working and hopefully carve out some time to read later. I'm about to run out the door to yoga and stuff's about to go down. This is insane. I'm on page 790, which means I still have 230 left. This is wild. I still have what could be a full book left, but oh my god, the quotes we're getting right now. I don't think I can tell you the most recent quote that made me swoon because technically it's a spoiler, but I also feel like you must know what's going on. So let me give you an abbreviated version of the quote. Does that work? Skip forward a minute if you want, okay? But I just need to say this one common theme that I kind of love is they cut each other off by kissing. So at the end of one of these parts, it just says, he didn't wait for a reply. He kissed her as though his lips were a brand on hers. Swoon worthy. I'm gonna go do yoga. It's a restorative flow class. Look how much I've read.
I have 100 pages left, and this book is killing me. I feel so many things, and I don't know what to feel, and I don't know how it's gonna end or resolve. And I want to finish it tonight, but I don't know if I'll be able to stay awake long enough. I'm feeling so shattered. I'm so emotional over this book, and my heart hurts. My heart really hurts. I walked 6 kilometers this evening and was listening to the audiobook the whole time. It's piercing. I think that's the best way to describe this book, is that it pierces through my heart. I feel emotionless because I don't know how to process everything I'm feeling. It's wild to think that that's how much power literature and ink on paper has. But I'm going to keep reading, and if by some miracle I end up finishing tonight, I will talk to you.
It has been a week since I finished Alchemized, and I'm finally ready to end this video. I will never be the same. Farron, it's wild. Honestly, going into it, I couldn't have ever predicted I would feel like I do right now. Over 1,000 pages of my life. That's how ingrained this book will be in me. It's like reading a 3-book series, honestly, at this point, because average books are around 300 pages. There were so many quotes from the end of the book, like after I last spoke to you, that I wanted to share, but it probably would have been spoilers because it's as everything is kind of wrapping up. I'll say the pacing, I didn't mind it, but I don't know if that's because I was switching between physical and audible. I could see if you were just reading the physical book that maybe some parts of the middle would get a bit repetitive. I loved it because having the 2 mediums of reading, I would be walking, so my mind was obviously on the book and I was listening intently, but there were other things I was doing as well while taking in the story. So all of the focus wasn't just on the repetitive chapters, if I could say it that way. They weren't repetitive, it was just getting the nitty-gritty details of the politics. And I was reflecting on this yesterday of how I would describe this book, because I don't know if romantasy is accurate. It feels a lot more fantasy with a romance subplot. However, as someone who would be turned off by a book if I heard that in some situations, because sometimes you're just craving a romantasy and you want romance to be more at the forefront, romance in Alchemized was frequency-wise not the prominent plot driver or plot point. It was pretty much the prominent plot driver, but it wasn't like frequency-wise, romantic scenes weren't that high up there, but the depth, the intensity, the care that was given to the romance subplot of the book made it feel like a romantasy, made it feel like romance was just as important, if not more. No, it's like so intertwined with the politics and the world building and the magic system. So the way it was executed, you almost didn't need the romance to be an integral part of every single chapter, and it wasn't. It was just always there in the background, but it starts off, I will say, like, I think the first 300 pages, or maybe 400, you're kind of thinking to yourself, how on earth is this considered romance at all? And I get you. But then once you cross, like, a specific threshold, once I started getting giddy, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy now, because how am I giddy over this couple? This is so wrong. But once you cross that, then you'll see what I mean. I highly recommend. I think it is a challenge. It's interesting because I read A Little Life years and years and years ago, and that book I genuinely wouldn't recommend to anyone. It felt like you're paying to be sad. Like, and I didn't get that much out of it, was the issue. These planes, man. As I was saying, with A Little Life, I finished that book thinking, okay, well, I was just sad. That sad was the only emotion I had. Whereas Alchemized had so many components to it, and I love fantasy. I love being in another world. So I think that definitely helped a lot in me loving it so much. The fact that I grew to not love this world, but grew to like love this story and really respect the magic system when it was about necromancy, which was making me sick to my stomach at the beginning, goes to show the power of this author and this writing and the story and the characters. They were so flawed and complex. Everyone had good and bad parts to them, and it felt so human but also so surreal because it was fantasy. I think a feeling I will never ever ever forget was finishing Alchemized. Because it's such a long book, the author got to go in detail of each section. So the end, when everything is wrapping up, but I don't mean like the battle scene or the climax of the story. I mean the end. Think of like the epilogue in a normal book. I hope all the rich people in their private planes are happy. Interrupting my video. What would have been an epilogue in a normal book, which is kind of like the after the battle, was at least 50, if not more pages in Alchemized. And what really stood out to me, I'm getting more mosquito bites. One bit me on my finger. The feeling I had of uneasiness, just like the main characters. This is kind of a spoiler-ish of the sentiment of how the book ends, so here you can skip ahead if you don't want to spoil it for Alchemized. I will put a timestamp of when I'm done talking about this and you can skip ahead. Technically, our main characters get their quote-unquote happily ever after. Of course, it's not a happily ever after in the true sense of the word, because everything they've been through so much war, loss, they've both killed, they've both had loved ones die. Like, it's not really a happily ever after, but they're together and they're both alive, which I honestly didn't know if we would get that ending. So I'm very, very grateful that we did, that they're both alive. That is shocking because they both almost die so many times throughout. And the way the author sets it up and continuously puts them in these situations, I honestly thought one of them would die or be blind or they would be separated. But no, they are together and they have children. They have a single daughter and son. Ooh, they have a kid. And what I couldn't get over as I was reading and felt this, I thought, wow, this author is so talented. I felt like I had to look over my shoulder. Just like these characters, after going through over 900 pages of war, trauma, torture, murder, all the above and more, when they finally escape together and they set up everything back at home so that they can escape and no one will come looking for them. Once they finally do that, they kind of live in this weird haze of they should be ecstatic. They finally got free. They're finally together. This is everything they worked for. But they aren't fully happy because they're so scared. Like, they are at the end. They are at the happily ever after, but they're terrified, looking over their shoulder all the time. Cain Farron, has to disguise himself and like dye his hair so that no one will recognize him because he was the #1 torturer. And all of the history books, like, we really see the aftermath of everything, and all the history books still paint him out to be this huge villain, and no one ever knows that he was really a double spy and working on the good side. And Helena, who basically saved them all, is barely mentioned once in any of the history books and what they're taught at school. And they had to do it that way. They had to leave history written that way so that they could escape and be together. And the feeling I had as a reader of my heart was racing and I felt stressed for them, reading about them being happy on this faraway island, finally getting everything they ever wanted. Because that's the reality. You don't actually just get happily ever after and erase everything that just happened to you. You have to deal with it, and it's so sad. But Helena, the main character, like her daughter or son, I forget the gender of their kid. I think it's a daughter. Yes, it's a daughter, because that was an important plot point earlier, that they were disappointed it wasn't a boy. Not they, but like anyway. It's getting hot. Truly, that feeling I will never forget, because I felt as if I were them. I was living their grief of everyone and everything they lost, and the simple life that they'll never have because they're just living in this fear of being found out or discovered while they're trying to live in peace and move on from everything that happened to them and everything they've had to do and sacrifice to get to where they are. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking back to some chapters and like how it ended and everything that was revealed. If I didn't have 150-ish books on my TBR, I would consider going back and rereading, and maybe one day in my life I will, because I think it'd be so mind-blowing to read part 1 having read part 2 and 3 with the time jumps. Anyway, I could talk about this book forever and ever and ever. If you've read it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Going on Goodreads and seeing the reviews was really interesting because it's quite polarizing. I think people either love or hate this book. I'm on the love side, and I honestly would probably recommend it to anyone in a stable mindset because it did make me very sad. The entire week I was reading it, I was very down. But alas, our journey has ended with Alchemized. Probably the book I at least expected to tackle off my TBR so soon in taking on this challenge to get through my TBR, because it's 1,000+ pages, but I'm so glad I did, and I, like I said, will think about that story for all the days to come. We have 100+ more on my TBR to get through, but I'm really glad I finally read Alchemized. That is all for me today. Have a lovely day. Bye.